The village of Worm and the mark of shame. The village of Worm was a place of extraordinary beauty, where the earth seemed to breathe with life. Surrounded by lush green forests and a sparkling river that whispered secrets of the ancients, it was a haven of stories and traditions. The villagers lived by unwritten laws shaped by generations of belief in the spirits of the land. Among these, the most revered role of a woman was motherhood, a sacred duty and proof of divine favor. Nyoka, a young woman of quiet strength and intelligence, had once been the pride of her family. Her laugh was a melody that could brighten any day, and her kindness extended to every corner of the village. Yet, in Worm, all of this was overshadowed by one painful truth: Nyoka could not bear children. Despite 5 years of marriage to her husband, Zoka, her womb remained empty. Zoka loved her deeply. He was a hunter of great skill, respected among his peers, but his loyalty to Nyoka often made him a target for scorn. His mother, Olina, an outspoken matriarch with sharp words and an unyielding belief in tradition, had grown bitter over the years. To her, Nyoka's barrenness was not just a personal failure but a shame upon their family. "You are a young man in your prime," Olina would hiss at Zoka, her voice laced with disdain. "Why waste your life on a woman who cannot give you children? Our bloodline will end because of her." Zoka would reply calmly, "Mother, Nyoka is my heart. Children or not, she is my wife." But Olina's words were not the only ones that stung. The women of Worm, who gathered at the river each morning, had made Nyoka the subject of their daily gossip. They spoke in loud, mocking tones, ensuring their words reached her ears. "Look at her," one would sneer, "all beauty and no purpose. What good is a woman who cannot bear life?" Another added cruelly, "The spirits must have cursed her. Perhaps she angered them with her arrogance." Nyoka endured the ridicule in silence, her head held high as she fetched water from the river. But each word was a dagger to her heart. She longed for a child, not just to silence her tormentors but to fill the aching void within her soul. Zoka's unwavering love was her only solace, but even his reassurances could not drown out the relentless whispers of the village. One fateful day, the cruelty reached a breaking point. As Nyoka approached the river, a group of women surrounded her. Their laughter was harsh and unkind, their words sharper than any blade. "Perhaps she should plant herself in the soil," said one, her voice dripping with malice. "Maybe then she'll grow something useful." The group erupted into laughter, their cruel taunts echoing through the trees. Nyoka froze, her hands trembling as she clutched her water jug. Tears welled in her eyes, but she refused to let them fall. She turned and walked away, her steps heavy with the weight of their scorn. That evening, Nyoka sat outside her small home, staring into the forest that bordered the village. The woods were a place of mystery and fear, filled with legends of spirits and forbidden places. It was said that those who ventured too far never returned, lost to the whims of ancient forces. But at that moment, Nyoka felt the pull of the forest's quiet embrace. It seemed to call to her, offering a sanctuary from the pain of her reality. Unable to bear the burden of her shame any longer, she rose and walked toward the forest. The moonlight guided her steps, and the trees seemed to part before her as if welcoming her into their depths. The whispers of the village faded behind her, replaced by the rustling of leaves and the distant cry of nocturnal creatures. Nyoka did not know where she was going, but she felt a strange sense of peace as she ventured deeper into the woods. Here, away from the judgmental eyes and harsh words of Worm, she could finally breathe. Yet, as she wandered, an unshakable feeling began to creep over her, a mix of anticipation and dread, as though the forest itself was alive and watching her every move. Eventually, she found herself standing before a massive, ancient tree unlike any she had ever seen. Its twisted branches reached skyward, and its bark shimmered faintly in the moonlight. Nyoka felt an inexplicable pull toward the tree, as if it held the answers to questions she had not yet dared to ask. Falling to her knees, she whispered into the silence, "Spirits of the forest, if you can hear me, please, help me. I will do anything to bear a child. Anything." Her voice trembled, and for a moment, there was no response. The forest was still, save for the gentle rustling of leaves in the wind. But just as despair began to take hold, a soft, ethereal light emerged from the shadows, illuminating the base of the tree. A voice, ancient and soothing, broke the silence. "Nayoka of Wom, your plea has been heard." Nayoka gasped and looked up, her eyes wide with both fear and wonder. Before her stood a figure cloaked in light, their features obscured but their presence undeniable. The spirit spoke again, its voice resonating through the forest like a song. "You seek a child, but the path you ask to walk is not without cost. Are you willing to bear the burden of what lies ahead?" Nayoka's heart pounded in her chest, but she did not hesitate. "Yes," she said firmly. "I will do whatever it takes." The spirit regarded her for a long moment before nodding. "Very well. Return to this place at dawn, and I shall give you the means to fulfill your desire. But remember, what you gain may not be what you expect. Your journey will test the strength of your heart and the depth of your love." With that, the spirit vanished, leaving Nayoka alone in the glow of the ancient tree. She sat there for a while, her mind racing with questions and possibilities. Finally, as the first light of dawn crept over the horizon, she rose and made her way back to the village, her heart both heavy with uncertainty and buoyed by hope. The sun rose on Wom, and with it, the promise of a journey that would change Nayoka's life forever. February 2nd. The spirit of the forbidden forest. As the first rays of dawn pierced through the dense canopy, Nayoka made her way back into the forest, her heart both fearful and resolute. She hadn't shared her encounter with the spirit with Zoka or anyone else, she knew they wouldn't understand. To them, the forest was a forbidden place, full of danger and spirits that meddled with human lives. But Nayoka's desperation outweighed her fear. The forest seemed different in the light of day. The twisted roots of ancient trees curled like snakes, and the air was thick with the scent of moss and earth. Nayoka moved cautiously, her senses attuned to every sound, the snap of a twig, the rustle of leaves, the distant call of birds. The deeper she went, the more the forest seemed to close in around her, as if testing her resolve. At last, she came to a clearing unlike any other she had seen. It was as though the forest itself had created a sanctuary around a single, enormous tree. Its trunk was massive, gnarled with age, and its branches stretched high into the heavens. Around it, a soft, golden light flickered, as hundreds of tiny fireflies danced in the still air. The clearing was eerily silent, no sound of birds, no rustling wind. It was as though the world held its breath in this sacred space. Nayoka's heart quickened. This had to be the silent tree of legend. Stories passed down through the generations spoke of a tree at the heart of the forest, guarded by spirits and said to hold unimaginable power. The villagers feared it, believing that those who ventured too close risked angering the spirits or being lost forever. Falling to her knees before the tree, Nayoka clasped her hands together and cried out, her voice trembling with desperation. "O great spirit of this forest, I beg you, hear my plea. I have been mocked and shamed because I cannot bear a child. If there is any mercy within you, please bless me with the gift of life. I am willing to pay any price." Her words echoed through the clearing, but no answer came. The silence pressed down on her, heavy and suffocating. Nayoka bowed her head, tears streaming down her face, and whispered, "Please. I have nothing else to give but my faith." The air grew colder, and the light of the fireflies intensified, casting long, flickering shadows. A low hum filled the clearing, like the resonance of a far-off drumbeat. Nayoka's breath caught in her throat as a figure began to emerge from the base of the silent tree. It was an enigmatic being, neither fully human nor fully spirit. Its form shimmered like water under moonlight, constantly shifting and flowing. Its eyes, deep and ancient, seemed to see through Nayoka's very soul. The being's voice, soft yet commanding, filled the air, resonating with a power that made Nayoka tremble. "Nayoka of Wom," it said, "your cries have awakened the spirits of the forest. You seek a child, but do you understand what you ask?" Nayoka looked up, her face wet with tears. "Yes," she said, her voice steady despite the fear coursing through her. "I understand the cost may be great, but I am willing to bear it. Please, grant me this gift." The spirit studied her for a long moment before speaking again. "The path you wish to walk is not without peril. A child born of the silent tree's power will carry a destiny that reaches beyond your understanding. Their life will not belong solely to you or to Wom. Are you willing to accept this burden?" Nayoka's heart pounded in her chest, but she nodded. "If it means I can bear a child, I will accept whatever burden you place upon me." The spirit extended a hand, and from its palm materialized a small, glowing seed. It was unlike anything Nayoka had ever seen, radiating a soft, golden light that pulsed like a heartbeat. "This is the seed of the silent tree," the spirit said. "Take it and plant it in your garden. Tend to it with care, for its growth will mirror your own journey. When the time comes, it will bear fruit, and from that fruit, your desire will be fulfilled. But heed this warning, Nayoka, what you gain will also come with loss. Love will guide you, but it will not shield you from pain." Nayoka reached out with trembling hands and accepted the seed. It felt warm against her palm, as if it held a living, breathing essence. "Thank you," she whispered, her voice thick with emotion. "Thank you for granting me this chance." The spirit's form began to dissolve, blending back into the tree and the surrounding light. Its final words lingered in the air. "Return to your village, Nayoka. Plant the seed and let fate take its course. Remember, the child born of this gift carries a destiny beyond your understanding. Be strong, for the path ahead will test the depth of your heart and the strength of your love." As the spirit disappeared, the forest seemed to exhale, the hum fading into silence. Nayoka sat there for a moment, cradling the seed in her hands, before rising to her feet. The golden fireflies continued to dance around the silent tree, their glow guiding her back toward the edge of the forest. When she emerged from the woods and saw the familiar sights of Wom, Nayoka felt a renewed sense of purpose. The burden of her shame had been replaced by the weight of hope and responsibility. She knew the journey ahead would not be easy, but she also knew it was one she had to undertake. As Nayoka stepped back into her village, the whispers and stares of the villagers greeted her as they always did. But this time, she did not falter. With the seed of the silent tree safely tucked away, she returned to her home, ready to begin the next chapter of her life. A chapter filled with uncertainty, but also with the promise of something extraordinary, the tree of life and the whispering shadows. Nayoka stood in her small garden, a patch of land behind her modest home where she and Zoka grew herbs and vegetables. It was a place of peace, but now it would be something more. In the early morning light, she held the seed from the silent tree in her hands. It pulsed faintly, as though alive, a warm reminder of the promise made to her in the forest. With care, Nayoka dug a small hole in the soil and placed the seed within it. She covered it gently, whispering a quiet prayer to the spirits. "May this seed grow strong and fulfill the promise you've made to me." As she watered the ground, a strange sense of calm settled over her. For the first time in years, she felt a glimmer of hope. The gossip begins. It wasn't long before the villagers noticed Nayoka's peculiar behavior. Every morning and evening, she could be seen tending to the patch of earth with a devotion that seemed almost ritualistic. Her movements were precise, her focus unbroken, as if the tiny patch of soil held the key to all her prayers. It didn't take long for whispers to spread through Wom. "What is she doing now?" one villager asked, peering over the fence of Naoka's home. Surely, it's witchcraft, another said. She's desperate for a child, and now she's turned to the spirits for help. No good can come of this. The riverbank, the market, and the village square buzzed with speculation. Naoka became the center of attention, her every move scrutinized and judged. She's cursed, an elder woman declared one evening by the fire. And if we're not careful, that curse will spread to all of Wong. But Naoka ignored their gossip. Each morning, she rose early to tend the soil, and each evening, she watered it under the fading light of the sun. Zoka, ever loyal, stood by her side, though even he couldn't hide his concern. Naoka, he said one evening as they sat together, the villagers are restless. They are saying things that aren't kind. Naoka met his gaze, her voice firm yet gentle. I know, Zoka. But I cannot stop. This seed is my only chance. I must believe in it even if no one else does. Zoka took her hand in his. Then I believe with you. Whatever comes, we'll face it together. The tree grows. Weeks passed, and one morning, Naoka awoke to find a tiny sprout breaking through the soil. Her heart leapt with joy as she knelt beside it, whispering words of encouragement. Grow strong, she said softly. Grow and bring the blessing you were meant to. The sprout grew quickly, faster than any ordinary plant. Within days, it was a sapling, its leaves shimmering faintly in the sunlight. By the end of the month, it had transformed into a small tree, its branches twisting skyward as though reaching for the heavens. The villagers noticed the extraordinary tree in Naoka's garden, and their gossip turned to fear. That tree isn't natural, one man whispered to his neighbor. Nothing good will come of this, another muttered. We should tell the elders to put an end to it before it's too late. Even Olina, Zoka's mother, grew suspicious. She cornered Zoka one evening and spoke in a hushed but sharp tone. That woman you call your wife is bringing danger to this family. I warned you not to marry her, and now look. A tree glowing in the night. It's a bad omen, Zoka. Mark my words. But Zoka refused to be swayed. Naoka is my wife, mother, he said firmly. And whatever comes, we will face it together. Dreams of a child. As the tree grew, Naoka began to experience vivid dreams. Each night, she saw a boy with radiant eyes and a laugh like the sound of wind chimes. He would run through fields of golden grass, reaching out to her with small hands. Mother, he would call, his voice filled with warmth and joy. Naoka would reach for him, but just as her fingers brushed his, the dream would fade, leaving her with a deep ache in her chest. She didn't understand the meaning of the dreams, but she felt in her heart that they were connected to the tree and the promise it held. The golden fruit. One evening, as Naoka watered the tree, something extraordinary happened. The leaves began to shimmer more brightly, and from one of the branches, a small bud appeared. Over the next few days, the bud grew into a fruit, golden and glowing like a miniature sun. Naoka stared at it in awe, her breath catching in her throat. The fruit pulsed with a gentle light, its glow casting shadows that danced across the garden. She reached out to touch it, but as her fingers brushed its surface, a whisper filled her ears. The path you seek begins with this fruit, the voice said, soft and haunting. But beware the cost. Naoka's hand trembled as she pulled it back. She looked around the garden, but there was no one there. The voice had come from nowhere, and everywhere. A growing divide. The sight of the glowing fruit only fueled the villagers' fear. Word spread quickly, and soon, groups of people gathered outside Naoka's home, pointing and murmuring. She must be stopped, one man said angrily. That tree is unnatural. It's a danger to all of us. Others nodded in agreement, but no one dared approach Naoka directly. The light of the golden fruit seemed to radiate a power that both mesmerized and terrified them. Inside her home, Naoka sat with Zoka, her hands clasped tightly in her lap. "The spirit warned me there would be a cost," she said quietly. "I don't know what it is, but I must see this through." Zoka placed a reassuring hand on her shoulder. "Whatever comes, we will face it together. I trust you, Naoka." As the golden fruit hung on the tree, glowing softly in the night, Naoka knew the moment of truth was drawing near. The gift she had longed for was within her reach, but so too was the unknown price that came with it. The child of the golden fruit. The golden fruit hung heavy on the tree, its glow soft but unyielding, as if it held the weight of 1,000 promises. Naoka stared at it, her heart pounding with a mix of anticipation and fear. She had tended to this tree for weeks, enduring the scorn of the villagers and the doubts of her own heart. Now, the moment had come. The spirit's words echoed in her mind, "The path you seek begins with this fruit, but beware the cost." That evening, under the light of a full moon, Naoka plucked the golden fruit from the tree. It was warm in her hands, almost as if it were alive. Sitting alone in her hut, she whispered a prayer, then bit into the fruit. The taste was unlike anything she had ever experienced, sweet and bitter, familiar and foreign. As she swallowed, a warmth spread through her body, filling her with a sense of peace and vitality. She finished the fruit and placed the remaining seeds in a small bowl. That night, Naoka slept deeply, her dreams filled with visions of a boy with radiant eyes and an aura of light. He called to her, his laughter echoing through her mind. When she awoke, she felt a strange, undeniable energy coursing through her veins. The miracle of life. Days turned into weeks, and Naoka began to notice changes in her body. Her appetite grew, and her movements became slower, more deliberate. Then, one morning, she realized the truth: she was with child. Tears streamed down her face as she knelt in gratitude. For years, she had endured the scorn of the village, the whispers of her barrenness, and the deep ache of longing. Now, she carried life within her. Zoka was overjoyed when she told him. "Naoka, this is a miracle," he exclaimed, embracing her. "Our prayers have been answered." Even Olina, who had been Naoka's harshest critic, softened when she saw the growing swell of her belly. The villagers, too, took notice. "She's pregnant," one whispered. "But how?" "It must be the tree." Some saw it as a blessing, others a sign of witchcraft. But no one could deny that something extraordinary was happening. The birth of Baraka. After months of anticipation, the day of Naoka's labor arrived. It was a stormy evening, the skies dark and brooding as rain lashed against the rooftops of Wom. Inside their hut, Naoka's cries of pain echoed as Sokka stayed by her side, holding her hand and whispering words of encouragement. The storm outside grew fiercer as the hours passed, but just as Naoka delivered her child, the wind stopped, and a strange, serene silence fell over the village. The child's first cry was unlike any other, a sound that seemed to resonate through the very earth. Naoka held her son close, marveling at his radiant eyes and the soft golden glow that seemed to emanate from his skin. They named him Baraka, meaning a blessing, for that was what he was to Naoka and Zoka. But as the days turned into weeks, it became clear that Baraka was no ordinary child. Baraka's gift. From infancy, Baraka exhibited abilities that left Naoka and Zoka in awe. At just a few weeks old, he could calm storms with his laughter. When he giggled, the rain would stop, and the skies would clear, as though nature itself responded to his joy. Animals were drawn to him in a way that was almost magical. Birds perched on the windowsill of their hut, singing softly as if in conversation with him. Even the wildest creatures of the forest approached him without fear. When Baraka began to crawl, flowers bloomed in his wake, their vibrant colors transforming even the most barren patches of soil. Naoka watched in wonder as her son brought life and beauty wherever he went. The villagers, who had once mocked and ridiculed Naoka, now looked upon her and her son with a mixture of reverence and fear. "Did you see what the child did?" one woman whispered to her neighbor. "The flowers in my garden were dead, but as soon as he crawled past, they came back to life." Another man shook his head. "It's not natural. The boy is touched by spirits. That kind of power, it's dangerous." A village divided. The villagers' reactions to Baraka's gift were divided. Some believed he was a divine blessing, sent by the spirits to bring prosperity to one. They began to visit Naoka's home, offering gifts and seeking Baraka's touch for their crops, their animals, even their own health. But others were not so kind. "That child is a curse," they muttered behind Naoka's back. "He's unnatural. Mark my words, nothing good will come of this." The tension in the village grew with each passing day, and Naoka found herself caught between gratitude and unease. A mother's worry. Though Naoka loved her son deeply, she could not ignore the growing weight of the spirit's warning. "The child born of this gift will carry a destiny beyond your understanding." Baraka's abilities brought joy to her heart, but they also brought questions she could not answer. What was his purpose? Why had the spirits chosen him? And what was the cost they had warned her of? One evening, as she watched Baraka play in the garden, surrounded by blooming flowers and chirping birds, Naoka felt a pang of fear. She remembered the visions in her dreams, the radiant boy calling to her, always out of reach. She wondered if there would come a day when she, too, would have to let him go. Zoka noticed her unease and placed a reassuring hand on her shoulder. "Naoka," he said softly, "Baraka is our son. Whatever his gifts mean, we will face it together. You are stronger than you know." Naoka nodded, but deep down, she knew that Baraka's destiny was already set in motion. The golden fruit had given her the child she longed for, but it had also opened the door to a path she could not yet see. As the sun set over warm, painting the sky in shades of gold and crimson, Naoka held her son close and whispered a prayer to the spirits. Whatever lay ahead, she would face it with love, courage, and unwavering faith. For Baraka was not just her son, he was a blessing, a mystery, and a harbinger of something far greater than herself. Baraka's destiny unfolds. Baraka grew quickly, faster than any child Naoka had seen. By the time he was 5, his golden eyes seemed to hold the wisdom of lifetimes, and his gifts became even more profound. He could calm animals with a whisper, heal wounds with a touch, and bring life to withered crops with a simple glance. The villagers, once torn between fear and reverence, watched him with awe. Children gathered to follow him as he played, animals trailed at his heels, and even the elders, who clung tightly to their traditions, spoke of him in hushed, respectful tones. But Baraka himself began to change. He would sometimes stop mid-play, his gaze distant, as if hearing something only he could perceive. At night, he began to dream of the silent tree. In these dreams, the tree shimmered with light, its branches stretching toward the stars. A voice, soft and melodic, called his name. One morning, Baraka approached Naoka, his small face serious beyond his years. "Mother," he said, "the tree is calling me. It says I have a purpose. That I must go to it someday." Naoka froze. Her son's words sent a chill down her spine, though she tried to keep her voice steady. "What does it say, Baraka?" Baraka looked down, his golden eyes reflecting the sunlight. "It says the world is hurting, and I can help. But I don't understand how." Naoka knelt before him, holding his small hands in hers. "You are still young, my son. Whatever your path may be, it will reveal itself in time. For now, let us take each day as it comes." Baraka nodded, but Naoka could see the weight of his dream settling on his small shoulders. A prophecy. That night, as Naoka lay awake in her bed, the air in the hut grew cold. A faint light seeped in from the doorway, and when she turned, she saw the same spirit from the forest standing at the foot of her bed. "Nayoka," the spirit said, its voice both familiar and haunting. Nayoka sat up, her heart racing. "You've returned," she whispered. The spirit's gaze was gentle yet unyielding. "Your son's destiny has begun to unfold. The tree has already called to him, for he is bound to its power. He will one day leave Wom to fulfill his purpose." Nayoka's breath caught. "Leave Wom? Why? He is just a child." The spirit raised a hand to calm her. "The child born of the silent tree is not meant to remain in one place. His gifts are not for Wom alone, they are for the world. He will bring healing to lands torn by strife, but his journey will not be without peril. He must choose this path willingly, for it cannot be forced upon him." Tears welled in Nayoka's eyes. "He is my son. I cannot bear to lose him." "You will not lose him," the spirit said softly. "But you must prepare yourself, for his path is his own. Your love and faith will guide him even when he is far from you." As the spirit faded into the darkness, Nayoka sat in silence, her heart heavy with both pride and sorrow. The village divides. As Baraka's gift grew more powerful, the events surrounding him became stranger. One day, a storm threatened to destroy the village. Fierce winds tore through Wom, uprooting trees and battering homes. While the villagers scrambled for shelter, Baraka walked calmly into the storm. Standing in the village square, he raised his small hands to the sky. "Enough," he said, his voice ringing with authority. The wind stopped instantly, the clouds parted, and the sun broke through, bathing the village in light. The villagers stared at Baraka in stunned silence, their fear and awe of him growing. "That child is a savior," one man declared. "He has the power of the spirits themselves." But others were less convinced. "No human child should have such power," an elder said, shaking his head. "This is not natural. He is dangerous." The division among the villagers grew with each passing day. Those who saw Baraka as a blessing came to Nayoka's home with offerings of food and gifts, seeking his help for their ailments and troubles. Others whispered in the shadows, accusing Nayoka of consorting with spirits and bringing a curse upon the village. One evening, a group of villagers gathered outside Nayoka's home, their voices rising in anger. "That child must leave Wom," one man shouted. "The spirit's wrath will destroy us all if he stays." Another added, "We've already seen enough strange events. How much longer until the spirits demand a price for his power?" Nayoka stepped outside, her face calm but her heart pounding. "Baraka is my son," she said firmly. "He has done nothing but bring life and peace to this village. Do not let fear blind you to the truth." Zoka stood beside her, his presence a silent show of support. The crowd wavered, some muttering their doubts, others retreating into the night. Nayoka's struggle. As the days passed, Nayoka grew more protective of Baraka, keeping him close and shielding him from the villagers' growing hostility. Yet she could not ignore the spirit's prophecy or the dreams that plagued her son. One evening, as they sat together beneath the stars, Baraka looked up at her with those radiant eyes. "Mother, are you afraid?" he asked. Nayoka hesitated, then nodded. "Yes, my son. I am afraid. But I am also proud. Whatever lies ahead, I know you will face it with courage." Baraka reached for her hand, his touch warm and reassuring. "I won't leave you, mother. Not until it's time." Nayoka smiled, though her heart ached. She knew that time was drawing nearer with every passing day. In the quiet of the night, as the village slept and the stars watched from above, Nayoka whispered a prayer to the silent tree. "Great spirits, give me the strength to let him go when the time comes. Let me be the mother he needs, even if it means losing him." The air was still, the only response the rustling of the wind through the trees. But in her heart, Naoka felt a flicker of resolve. Whatever lay ahead, she would face it with faith and love, for Baraka, and for the destiny he was born to fulfill. The farewell. The village of Wom was alive with the golden light of dawn, and the air was filled with the songs of birds. It was Baraka's 18th birthday, a day of joy for many young men in the village, as it marked their transition into adulthood. But for Baraka, it was the day he had long anticipated and quietly feared. For years, he had dreamed of the silent tree, its whispers growing louder with time. The voice was no longer an echo in the distance but a clear call, beckoning him to fulfill the destiny tied to his birth. On this day, Baraka knew he could no longer ignore it. Naoka stood at the door of their hut, watching her son pack a small satchel. Her heart ached with the weight of what was to come, but she held her composure. She had known this moment would arrive since the day she first held him in her arms. "Are you sure, Baraka?" she asked softly, her voice steady but tinged with sorrow. Baraka turned to her, his golden eyes calm and resolute. "Mother, I must go. The tree has called me, and I cannot deny it. This is what I was born to do." Naoka nodded, tears welling in her eyes. She stepped forward and embraced him tightly, holding him as if she could imprint the memory of him into her soul. "Remember what the Spirit said," she whispered. "Your path is your own, but love and faith will always guide you." Baraka kissed her forehead. "I will return, Mother. One way or another, I will always be with you." Zoka stood nearby, his expression stoic yet proud. He placed a hand on Baraka's shoulder. "Go with courage, my son. The land is in your hands now." The villagers gathered as Baraka prepared to leave. Some looked on with reverence, while others murmured in fear and skepticism. "He's going to the silent tree," one whispered. "What will happen to him?" "Perhaps he will save us," another replied. Baraka walked through the village, his step sure and unhurried, the weight of his destiny settling firmly on his shoulders. At the edge of the forest, he turned back to see Naoka standing alone, her hand raised in a silent farewell. He nodded to her and disappeared into the trees. The journey. The forest was darker than Baraka remembered, its canopy so dense that sunlight barely reached the ground. The air was thick with the hum of insects and the rustling of unseen creatures. Each step felt heavier, the weight of the forest's ancient magic pressing down on him. Baraka walked for hours, the whispers of the silent tree guiding him. The deeper he went, the more the forest seemed to test him. His first trial came in the form of a raging river, its waters swift and merciless. The bridge that once crossed it had long since rotted away, leaving him no clear path forward. Baraka knelt by the riverbank, closing his eyes and focusing on the voice of the tree. "Patience and trust, Baraka," the voice whispered. He noticed a series of rocks just beneath the surface, spaced far apart but stable. One by one, he stepped onto them, his balance unwavering despite the river's roar. When he reached the other side, he felt a surge of confidence. The second trial came at dusk, when a wild boar charged at him from the underbrush. Its tusks gleamed, its eyes filled with fury. Baraka stood his ground, holding out his hands. "Peace," he said softly, his voice steady. The boar stopped inches from him, its heavy breathing echoing in the silence. Slowly, it lowered its head and backed away, vanishing into the forest. The third trial came as night fell, when Baraka stumbled upon a barren patch of land. The soil was cracked and lifeless, the trees around it withered. He knelt, placing his hands on the ground, and closed his eyes. "The land remembers," the tree whispered. "Restore its balance, and it will guide you." Baraka poured his energy into the soil, his body glowing faintly as the earth began to respond. Grass sprouted beneath his hands, and the trees regained their vitality, their leaves unfurling in the moonlight. Revelations. As dawn broke, Baraka reached the heart of the forest. there stood the silent tree, larger and more magnificent than he had ever imagined. Its branches reached high into the heavens, and its roots burrowed deep into the earth, glowing faintly with golden light. The tree spoke to him, its voice resonating through his very being. You have come far, Baraka. Your trials have prepared you, but your journey is not yet complete. Baraka knelt before the tree. What is my purpose? He asked. Why was I given these gifts? The tree's light grew brighter, enveloping him. Your gifts are meant to heal the land and its people. Long ago, greed and neglect poisoned the earth, and the balance was broken. You are the bridge between the spirits and humanity. Your task is to restore harmony, but the path ahead will be filled with sacrifice. Baraka's heart swelled with understanding and fear. What must I do? The tree's voice softened. Travel beyond one. The world is vast, and its wounds are many. You will bring life where there is none, hope where there is despair. But remember, your power is not limitless. You must give of yourself to heal the world, and in doing so, you may lose much. Baraka bowed his head. I accept this burden. Tell me what I must do. The tree extended one of its branches, a single golden leaf falling into Baraka's hands. This leaf will guide you. Plant it in the places most in need, and it will renew the earth. Go now, and let the spirits guide your way. Baraka rose, the golden leaf glowing faintly in his hands. He looked back toward the direction of Wom, knowing he might never see his home again. But as he stepped forward, he felt a sense of purpose and peace. The journey had only just begun, but Baraka was ready to face whatever lay ahead. For the sake of the world, and the legacy of the silent tree, he would give everything he had. The final test. Baraka stood before the silent tree, its golden light bathing the clearing in an otherworldly glow. He held the single golden leaf the tree had given him, the weight of its purpose pressing heavily on his heart. The tree's voice resonated once more, this time filled with a gravity that made the air around him tremble. Baraka, you have proven yourself worthy of the gifts you bear, the tree said. But now, you must decide. Will you remain among the spirits, becoming one with their power to heal the world? Or will you return to Wom, where your gifts will inspire change, yet bind you to the limitations of mortal life? Baraka's heart pounded. The choice was clear in its simplicity but profound in its implications. If he stayed with the spirits, he would gain limitless power, able to heal the earth on a scale no mortal could imagine. But it would mean leaving his family, his village, and the world of human connection behind. He closed his eyes, recalling the faces of his mother, Nayoka, and his father, Zaka. He thought of the villagers, the land of Wom, and the bonds he had formed throughout his life. His gifts, though extraordinary, had always been a bridge between the spiritual and the human. I was born of this world, Baraka said, opening his eyes. And though my gifts come from the spirits, my heart belongs to Wom. I will return to my people and use what I have been given to guide them, inspire them, and heal the land through their hands. The tree's light dimmed, as though it were bowing to his decision. You have chosen the path of love and sacrifice, it said. It is the harder road, but it is one only you could walk. Go, Baraka, and carry the light of the spirits within you. The golden leaf dissolved into a shimmering mist, encircling Baraka before sinking into his skin. He felt its power settle within him, not as an external force, but as a part of his very being. Baraka's choice. Baraka returned to Wom under the cover of night, the forest parting for him as though acknowledging his journey. When he emerged at the edge of the village, he was greeted by silence. The once bustling settlement seemed almost asleep, but as he walked through the familiar paths, Nayoka appeared, as if she had been waiting for him. Baraka, she whispered, tears filling her eyes. He stepped forward and embraced her, holding her close. I'm home, mother. The next morning, the villagers awoke to find Baraka standing in the center of the village square. He radiated a calm, powerful energy, and his presence drew everyone from their homes. "I have returned," he said, his voice steady but filled with emotion. "The silent tree has given me a purpose, not to be your savior, but to teach you how to honor the land and live in harmony with it." The villagers listened intently as Baraka shared the lessons he had learned on his journey. He spoke of the greed that had once cursed the earth, the importance of balance, and the role each person must play in healing the land. Some were skeptical at first, but Baraka's actions soon silenced their doubts. He used his gift sparingly, guiding the villagers to rely on their own efforts. Together, they rejuvenated the fields, planted forests, and built stronger, more sustainable homes. Legacy. Over the years, Baraka became not just a healer but a leader. The village of Wom transformed under his guidance, flourishing in ways it never had before. The land became fertile and abundant, and the people, once divided, grew united in their purpose. Nayoka watched with pride as her son fulfilled the destiny she had long feared yet always hoped for. Though the years had taken their toll on her, she found peace in knowing that Baraka's journey had brought him not only wisdom but also a deep connection to his roots. One evening, as the sun set over the rejuvenated fields, Nayoka sat with Baraka under the same tree where she had once planted the seed from the silent tree. "You've done so much," she said softly, her voice filled with pride. Baraka smiled, his golden eyes still carrying a trace of the tree's light. "It's because of you, Mother. You believed in me when no one else did. You gave me the strength to walk this path." Tears welled in Nayoka's eyes, but they were tears of joy. "I only followed my heart, my son. And my heart always knew you were meant for greatness." Closing. The story of Nayoka and Baraka became a legend passed down for generations in Wom and beyond. It was told around fires on quiet nights and to children as they drifted off to sleep, a tale of love, sacrifice, and the courage to embrace the unknown. Nayoka, once mocked and scorned, became a symbol of resilience and faith. Baraka, the child of the silent tree, was remembered as the healer who taught the world to honor the land and its spirits. And the silent tree itself, deep in the heart of the forest, stood as a reminder of the bond between the spiritual and the human, a bond forged by love, tested by sacrifice, and strengthened by the unyielding belief that even the smallest seed can change the world.